Good afternoon, Williams.
How are you, sir? I'm
Fine.
good.
And Namaskar.
Yes, it's the middle of the night here, but I'm awake and I'm ready.
Yes. Most welcome and really glad to see you and appreciate your this concern about this webinar at the middle of
Well,
the night.
yeah, I think it'll be a good webinar. I think we'll
I-
probably have a follow-up one because this is a developing topic, but
Yeah.
it certainly grabbed people's attention, even though I think we'll discover a lot of people don't know what to do with it.
Yes.
Um,
Exactly.
they
Exactly.
think they should do something with it, but they don't know what they should do with it.
What they should. Yes. Exactly. That is a uh, that's why we namaskar to all participants and William William sir, your the session with the guidance notes. Yeah, sorry. Environmental, social, and governance consideration. These are increasingly integral to valuation practices now in India also, as well. But still, as you said, that valuers are groping with the idea how to incorporate or how to make use of the ESG, which is a very prominent now topic, or I would say subject, where the governance is of any company or any country or any society is concerned. And this actually shift would reflect towards a growing recognition of the importance of sustainability in long term value creation. That's where it will be a different concept altogether. And in coming years, we are coming to terms that valuers would require to evaluate factors such as carbon footprint and community relations, board composition, regulatory compliances, and accordingly determine asset values. More or less, it is now becoming a part of the accounting standards and accounting systems. But ultimately, it is going to impact valuation as far as my little knowledge is concerned about this factor. So one can really make a difference between a simple building without any consideration of ESG, and I'm speaking in terms of building only, and a building with the considerations of ESG taken care of. So I think I will not like to take much of your time at such a morning, but I really am thankful to you and obliged that at the middle of the night you are there for our participants, our valuers from India, and who are, I think, very eager. You can see that already 90 participants have joined us. So some more may be joining during the course of this, and I think it will go a long way. Uh, at IOV or as an Indian, I would not like to rest here only with this small 1 hour piece of advice for us regarding the ESG, but we should be carrying on with this with furthermore deliberations and furthermore maybe some training programs on this. So we are contemplating on the training for ESG as well, and ESG's application, especially the valuers need to know how they can comply with the ESG in their valuation reports, and how this factor, the main issue is like sustainability. I think for that matter, the entire world is one in the as far as the valuation is concerned, and the valuers are concerned. When there we look at their concerns, their problems, I believe that everywhere this is the same issue, sustainability, and that is very hitting. So, William sir, I would like you to begin your this, and once again, thank you. And I believe this session will be highly knowledgeable, and our participants would be enlightened with this new effect, and we would rather go furthermore. Then this is the beginning, you can say, with you, sir. Thank you. Please, sir, proceed.
Good, thank you, Vinay. Always a pleasure to work with my friends in India, especially those like yourself that I've met at conferences and other things. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bill Hanlin. I am the president and CEO of IACVS, an international valuation organization that is devoted to best practices and education of how to apply them. Our mission is not entirely international. We have a membership presence in about 40 different countries, and so we we find that we've become an important and integral part in bringing modern valuation theory and models to play in various economies around the world, some developed, some developing, some wondering what they're going to do. ESG has sort of exploded onto the valuation world's scene. And I have a short PowerPoint presentation that I will put up in a few minutes here. And I may need some technical help on doing that. I usually have somebody else doing this, but the International Valuation Standards Council decided that the whole ESG topic should be explored and should be included in international valuation standards. There's been lots of pushback on that, and I'll go through some of the reasons for that. But, you know, as Mr. Vinay said in the introduction here, accounting standard setters, regulators, securities regulators, they want to know about ESG. And this whole topic started as an accounting matter because regulators of publicly traded companies wanted companies, and they still want companies, to comment in their annual reports on ESG. So we really have no choice. We have to deal with this as it is. I'm not going to be able to give you the definitive medicine on how to deal with this today, but I want to give you some background and then tell you where we're going. I will tell you later, we are in the process of developing a fairly comprehensive 1 day or day and a half course on this matter that will have a lot of this information organized for you, especially if you're a practitioner, whether you are a business valuer or a property appraiser. And well, let's just go ahead and get into the presentation. So I'm going to try to share my screen. This one, right? Okay. And can you all see my screen? Can everybody see my opening PowerPoint here? Hello. Mr. Vinay, can you see my my PowerPoint screen here?
I'll just ask.
Can you see my
Yes.
screen?
Yeah, just ask. Now it is there?
Is there?
Yeah.
All right.
You can see
All right.
your this.
All right, good. So as part of our program, we offer professionals a professional credential, the ICVS, or International Certified Valuation Specialist. It is recognized all over the world. It is in good standing. IVSC has recognized this, and frankly, at this point, to my great surprise, the ICVS is the only international professional credential that is available to practitioners who feel that they need that to enhance their reputation. So what will we cover today? We're going to talk briefly about what is ESG. We're going to talk about why it's important. We want to look at some scenarios of how we can integrate ESG into a business valuation project. And then we want to discuss what's next. So what is ESG? It's an acronym for E stands for environmental values, S stands for social values, and G stands for governance values. There's a lot of literature on this. I and my team are presently studying about 400 pages of articles that have been written over the last several years on this very subject. There's a lot of controversy around it. We'll talk about how other professionals in both the business valuation and property appraisal disciplines view ESG. But ESG came as an idea to influence ESG investing. Okay, now what does ESG investing mean? That means if you, I'll tell you what it means today. Today, if you are a stockholder or a stakeholder that has funds that are being invested, and you think that global warming and other issues, environmental issues, are very important, then you want your money to be invested in companies that have taken environmental, social, and governance values into consideration about how their company works. So it came to some prominence as an idea in the late 1960s. It saw renewed interest in 1989 when the Exxon Valdez, a supertanker, came out of Cordova, Alaska, and ran aground, tore a hole in the hull, and spilled millions of gallons of raw crude oil out into the Gulf of Alaska. And it took years to clean it up, but it highlighted the fragility with which our global environment is when mistakes like that are made, and then what to do about it. So, another 10 years went by, and at the Davos World Economic Forum, the chair of the World Economic Forum put out a paper on human rights, on labor and environment, and the term ESG was coined. A good idea? Sure. But most of the business world was unsure about what to do with this. In 2015, you saw many countries sign on to the Paris Agreement, Paris Accord, that countries were now talking about, well, gee, maybe global warming is for real, and we have to do something about this. Government can't do anything about this. It's businesses that have to do something about it. So in today's environment, and I began by talking about ESG being an accounting issue, there are some regulators in various countries of public companies that expect the annual reports of these public companies to discuss the company's ESG score. And we'll talk about the ESG score during our session today. There are, all you got to do is go out on the internet and type in ESG score, and you'll have more articles than you can read in a week and a half, and different opinions about it, of what is there and what is not there, and who should be considering it and who should not be considering it. I will tell you, until IVSC decided that they were going to get involved, and they claim that they got involved with ESG because their stakeholders want the valuation profession to have something to say about it. So let's look at each element, E and S and G. E stands for environmental values. And here are some of the aspects that affect the environment upon which companies can be valued or establish their values. A carbon footprint. What is the impact on the environment? Now, I'm sitting in an office here in Seattle, Washington, in the United States. We don't have much of a carbon footprint. But, just down the road from here, they make diesel trucks, semis that, that move cargo around all over the world. And, they have rubber tires that wear off. The rubber gets into the air, or whatever the composite is that tires are made out of today. Diesel fuel puts out its own emissions that are impacting the ozone layer. And, scientists want to tell you that carbon emissions are the greatest threat that we have to global warming, where the polar ice caps are melting, rainforests are going away. It's harder to grow crops to feed everybody in this planet of almost 10 billion people. Then there's energy efficiency. And those who value or appraise commercial property are being urged to deal with this too. There has been this whole science of green building development that has really become important over the last 10 years. Is your building energy efficient? Do you have light switches with sensors that turn the lights off in the room when there's nobody present, or there's no movement that's been detected, in order to save the requirements of the energy grid in producing electricity? Uses of renewable energy, sustainable land use. Today we're having unbelievably huge arguments about land use that 20 years ago we would have been astonished to even think they would come on the table. Where I live, there's a massive effort to change how electricity is produced. Now, we're blessed in where I live because we have lots of mountains, so we have lots of running water, and that gives us abundant hydroelectric power. But as businesses grow, as populations expand, now there's a move to basically do a land grab in areas where there are high winds, and to build power generating windmills. And that's probably a responsible thing to do. Nobody wants to build another coal-fired plant or a nuclear power plant or even a diesel power plant. So let's use the resources that we have. But the discussion isn't just about using the resources and the land. Now we get into groups that say, oh, you're going to ruin my view. I don't want to look out my window and look at these windmills. They're expensive to build. Yeah, they are expensive to build. Why don't you do this somewhere else? I don't want this in my backyard. And it's fascinating to listen to people talk about what they want versus what might be good for everybody. And it will come down to, the size of the project. Costs will be a consideration. Those that are opposed to things like this will spend years, maybe even go to court to stop it. But time marches on, and as the global population increases and the need for goods and services, or even just having sustainable environments in your home increase, all of these resources will come into use. So then there's water usage. It's amazing how much water gets used every day. I one day remarked when I was on a visit in China, I wonder how many chickens are eaten every day. And of course, that leads to, I wonder how many eggs are consumed around the world every day. Imagine how much water is used every day. And well, I'm not talking about just water, I'm talking about potable water, water that is used to drink or to cook or to wash. And how much of it is wasted? And every now and then we are preached at for conserve water. And in the last 5-6 years, as the environment has gotten warmer, you've had one government after another, impose water usage restrictions. Can't water your lawn. You can't wash your car. We want you to take shorter showers. Water usage is part of these environmental values. Pollution is around us. Go to any major city in the world, and on a warm day, you can see the haze descend on civilization, and it's not healthy. One of the serendipitous advantages of the time when everybody was locked down during COVID-19 is that people stopped driving, and the atmosphere in major cities all over the world, and there were news reports on this all over the world. The skies cleared up. The skies cleared up. You could see, more than half a mile. The reports of people having difficulties with respiratory disease went down. Pollution is a major issue. Waste management. What happens to all that garbage that we throw away? Well, right now, most of the world's garbage goes into landfills, which means it's going to some place where nobody lives, and it's getting buried. And there's a whole science to waste management in landfills. You might be surprised at not only the equipment and the expense that it takes for the equipment, but what the regulations and government laws require what do you bury? How can you bury it? What do you recycle? How can you do that? What about the energy that it takes for recycling? Does it make it worthwhile, or should we just bury it? Nobody wants a landfill in their backyard, and yet they're all over the world. Yeah, sadly, some countries are actually allowing garbage to be, floated out into the ocean and just dumped. I mean, who's going to bother there? Now we get reports periodically of massive gatherings of plastic out there that fish are getting caught up in, or that kind of pollution, and it's threatening marine life. Biodiversity impact. I'm not quite even sure what biodiversity impact is, but it's in a number of lists of those things that constitute environmental values. So, social values. What does this mean? I mean, if you're just discovering social values now for the first time, you might wonder, is this a be nice to everybody thing? Is this a religion thing, or what is it? Well, we've talked about the types of values in business valuation for, I don't know, the last 30 years. Social values is up there, but by the time, for those of us that are instructors for people coming into business valuation, we get to social values, and there's always a hand that goes up. Well, what's a social value? How does that impact business? Well, now there are numerous ways to measure social values. What is a business's relationships with its neighbors? Do they have barbed wire fences or cyclone gates? Do they have guards that protect the plant or the equipment or the business? I mean, what is the community of neighbors? What is the dynamic workspace for employees? Do employees have enough room to actually claim that they have their own space. During COVID, it was interesting to see newsreel reports of some meat packing plants and how people would stand shoulder to shoulder as they were, getting animal products, chicken, beef, pork, fish, ready to be shipped to consumers. And there was no space between people. What is a good space for being healthy? And what is a good space for being safe? Um, this is a consideration when measuring social values. Customer relations, can include all kinds of things. And we've considered customer relations and business valuations now for years because it's considered, one of those intangible assets that every business has. Lately, we've expanded our business valuation inquiry into data protection. When we talk to a company, everybody's got computers. Everybody keeps data on their customers, on their suppliers. What do they do to protect it? We used to think that hackers were only those people that were interested in fraud and stealing your money or your identity so they could steal your money. The problem with that is today, data protection is, well, it's expensive. You've got to have, firewalls and email software so that your stuff is safe, that your data is safe. Do you do that? And we're asking, what do you as a business do to protect the data that you have? And it's surprising how many businesses think what they have isn't important to anybody. Hackers today are not necessarily interested in fraud. They do it because it's fun. We have this group of dynamic computer wizards, that are in their teens and early 20s, and they think it's really fun or funny to get into the computer of a power grid or a government agency or a military installation and fish around and look around and see what they can do or see what they can find. And maybe they'll put it out on the internet and release secrets, your information. It happens all the time. In my day life, I help run a firm of certified public accountants. Oh yeah, and guess what we have? We have tax information. So the Internal Revenue Service here in the United States, like many tax authorities around the world, has published rules and regulations for practitioners like us on you must keep data safe. You must have a plan for data recovery. You must do this, you must do that. And they tell you there are serious fines for companies that do not take data protection seriously. And then what about fair pay? Some countries are highly regulated. They have minimum wage laws. Some of those countries enforce those laws more than others. But what does it say about a company that's willing to hire child labor, to pay people on a scheme or a rate that doesn't even let these people have a sustainable life, where they can have a home, they can have shelter, they can afford food for their family, they can afford to, provide the basic necessities of clothing, shelter, and food for their families. What does it say about a company that's willing to, for the sake of making money, do those things that aren't very nice? So then let's look at G, governance issues. Now, I used to think this was about government regulations, and it's not. Again, get in and read any article on ESG, and they'll tell you that how a company's governance structure is put together and how they actually operate are very important to establishing their ESG value, or what more concisely, their ESG score. And these values include things like board diversity and structure. This is real important for public companies. What is executive compensation? All over the world, you read articles about, the CEO of this big Fortune 500 or S&P 500 or big company, and the boss is taking out 40 million or $1 billion a year, some ridiculous number, and they get stock options, and they're going to be forever rich, and yet the average pay for their employees is not very much, but they're willing to pay the executive suite, the CEO, the CFO, the COO, the CIO, huge amounts of money to attract maybe talent, but maybe only names, so that they can say, oh, so-and-so's on our board, and that makes us important. What about shareholder rights? In valuation, we deal with shareholder rights on a very frequent basis. And it's always been for privately held companies where one shareholder or partner doesn't think that the rest of them are being fair to them. How are shareholder rights not only spelled out in operating agreements, shareholder agreements, but do they really have rights? If you're a minority shareholder and you own a very, very small percentage of a company, and you decide that maybe the company isn't going where you want it to go, or they're doing something that frankly you just don't like, you have limited choices. You could just sell your stock. But what if you don't want to sell your stock? Maybe you work for this company. And so, not only what are your shareholder rights, but does the company acknowledge those shareholder rights and try and deal with you accordingly? Business ethics. There's a sort of a new or renewed term out there when it comes to looking at ESG. It's called the sin industries, like gambling, like tobacco, like alcohol. These industries make a lot of money, but are they ethical about it? Do they take care to see that young people who might be attracted to cigarettes understand what the health hazards are for them on a long-term basis? What about risk management? Now, we've always dealt with the evaluation of risk and management in business valuation, but this has become one of the mantras of ESG. What is the risk management? Does the company and its board and its officers and its workers consider risk management? I'm not just talking about safety rails and guards in a factory. I'm talking about all aspects of risk management, including management of liquid assets, of inventory, of receivables, and etc. And then supply chain management. My office is in a building that is basically a very large clinic. There's 5 floors here, and right across the hall from us is the supply management division of this clinic, and everything that comes into this building for the clinic goes into that room or rooms, and then it's dispersed out to the various stations and floors of the building according to some design of how these supplies are supposed to be used. So in evaluating supply chain management, is there waste? And is there waste of things that are important or of things that are just being thrown away? I'll tell you where supply chain management is really crucial everywhere in the world is in the matter of food. Restaurants buy food every day. And because of health concerns, if food is not taken care of, refrigerated or frozen or handled with, rubber gloves or whatever, I have to throw it away. And at the end of the day, if that food is still good, even from a health point of view, most countries have rules that don't allow that food to be used for people who don't have any or people who have less. And so this management of the supply chain of food for the restaurants becomes crucial so that waste is minimal. Waste is minimal, and yet there's still waste. So how is ESG used today? Commonly, public companies spend money to arrive at an ESG score. The credit reporting agency Fitch will tell you that they can do an ESG study and establish what your ESG score is for your business. Their fee starts at $250,000 US and more typically runs at $500,000 US or more. That's a lot of money. In the context of this seminar, Valuation and ESG, I don't know most of my clients, if ever, would have that kind of money around to discover what their ESG score is. But I guess the bigger the company, the bigger the public company is, the more money you have. And when regulators say you need to include in your annual report commentary on your ESG score, well, then you go spend the money. So right now, ESG is measured from 1 to 100, where 50 is considered poor and 70 is considered good. It's sort of like going to school. If you get a 50 out of 100, you are not doing very well. If you get a 70 out of 100, you're doing okay. That's the only analogy I can think of right now, because these outfits that will compute your ESG score for you are not real forthcoming about how they do it. There's no commonality about how ESG scores are created or how they're used. And as I've mentioned several times, Public Company Report reports its ESG score in annual report to stockholders, and the big four accounting firms see an opportunity for consulting here and say, hey, we'll help you write your management report to stockholders on what ESG means. And so the narrative on ESG, while it's been more widely required by public regulators like securities regulators and banking regulators, it's taken on this hue of an accounting matter. And now we're being told, really as recently as the last 24 months, we're being told, no, this isn't an accounting matter per se, it's a valuation matter. So how does ESG impact business valuation? Well, it depends. If you already, as a practitioner, consider management depth, financial performance, borrowing ability, organization of company records for accounting purposes, whether the company abides by rules and regulations, avoids unethical practices like fraud, then there are some of us that suggest that you're already doing the risk analysis that includes most of the ESG factors. But let's say that you should do more. BV already considers the risk to investors. And what do investors want? Investors want to know how much money they can make, right? They want to know what their future earnings, what are the possibilities? And they're not really thinking about fixing things or rewriting policies or increasing expense to give more space to workers or more money to workers or more benefits to workers. They're not thinking about that. They're thinking, I'm going to invest in this company. I want to know what I'm going to get back. And the thing that I can get back is I can get money. I can get profits. The raging debate, according to many people here in the United States, I live in the United States, about ESG is surrounding the investments that are being made by large public pension funds. They've got hundreds of billions of dollars waiting to be used to pay retirement benefits to people who have been government workers, or they've been educators, or they've been doctors, or they've been something in a union. But let's talk about that for a minute. Let's say you work for government, let's just say, and your government puts money aside for you. Maybe even you contribute, because there are many organizations that do that too. They let you take some of your money and invest in your retirement plan. Now you're being told by this group of participants, we don't want our pension being invested in coal companies or oil companies. We don't want that because they're contributing to global warming. You know, with all the cars and trucks and trains and buses and airplanes that are polluting every day. We don't like that. And we don't want our pension or retirement money being invested in companies that are creating this problem. Then you have another group in the same organization that says, no, wait. What are you doing? If we can't invest in companies that will give us the highest return, then we're not going to get as much money when we retire. And many people don't retire with a lot of money. Their lifestyle changes. It becomes smaller. Their footprint becomes smaller. But you know, when you retire, you want to live a more carefree life. You don't go to work every day. Oh, okay, maybe you take a part-time job just for something to do, but you want your house paid off. You want to be able to afford medical benefits. You might be putting your children through college, or you want to help your child buy a house. But maybe you can't do that if your retirement benefits are going to go down because your retirement funds are not going to be invested for the highest and best return. This is where the big divide on ESG comes in, because ESG has evolved in its meaning. It still means the same, but it's taken on this hue of, if you support an ESG phenomena where bad people or bad companies with low ESG scores are punished, then you're against my retirement. You're against my retirement. I want all the money I can get from my retirement, and you're against me. So there's this divide. And I won't say it's a social divide, but it's kind of a political divide. Okay, so we'll move past that for a minute. We'll come back to this bias thing in a minute, but maybe we're already doing what the standard setters think we should do. The standard setters think that ESG should be considered in every valuation. They haven't told you how. IACVS is working on the how, and I'll talk about that before we're done. But let's look at borrowing capacity. Will ESG make business borrowing more expensive? You know, right now, banks do their own evaluation before lending. It's called due diligence. You know, what collateral is available if the borrower can't pay? What is the risk the bank is taking that it won't be able to collect the borrowed money? These aspects influence not only the amount that they're willing to lend, but also the interest rate. So I would submit to you, at least in the banking industry, commercial banking industry, that if you're a business that is a polluter or is subject to environmental rules about how you're supposed to work and how you keep track of things, that if you go to the bank, they're going to charge you a higher interest rate than they would to a preferred lender. We did a valuation for a company that distributes home heating oil here in my metropolitan area. And so they receive oil, they put it in tanks. The oil comes in on barges. Oh, yeah. It comes in on barges. So there's an opportunity for water pollution on a freshwater body of water moving from the barge to the oil tanks. Then there's an opportunity for pollution when it comes out of the oil tanks and goes into the trucks. Then there's an opportunity for pollution when the trucks are on the road going to where they're going to deliver their home heating oil. There could be an automobile accident. They could have tire blowouts. There could be something that hits the tank and causes a leak out on the street. There could be, a crash where this this truck tanker, explodes or does damage to somebody else and pollutes the local environment with many thousand gallons of home heating oil. There are regulations on all of this. This company has to have special tanks that do nothing except wait for the possibility that the existing tanks will spring a leak, and they will spring a leak into the reservoir tank that has been built with money and maintained over the years for its structural integrity to capture any of the oil that escapes the existing tank. Now, do you think banks take that into consideration if that company wants to go buy new trucks or build new tanks or pay more for their insurance because they're considered high risk? I would submit to you that ESG is already considered by many people in the business community, but I digress. I'm also running out of time. But I'm on the downside of this seminar. How does ESG impact business valuation? Well, it really depends. Should the valuator consider a composite ESG score, or should each factor of E and S and G be considered separately? Should ESG be considered in all business valuations? Well, the IVSC, the International Valuation Standards Council, they think so. And so does IACVS. We think so. But being considered and actually having an impact on value are two different things. We want you, as practitioners, if you are asked after the fact, did you consider ESG? We want you to be able to say, yes, we considered it. We want you to be able to say whether or not your consideration of ESG has caused a consideration or not. There was this marvelous study put out by the Kroll company, I think last August. 97 pages. It's very well worth reading. It gives you lots of background about where did ESG come from, how's it being dealt with today. Its purpose is still, investor diversification for making life better for everybody by having higher scores. They even suggest some methodology, although they're real thin on that. How might ESG be considered? We want you to be able to say, yes, I did, but the biggest barrier to evaluating ESG is data. Data, data, data. 30 years ago when I started providing lectures on business valuation, I would go to a country that had no data, no data. And yet there were people there that wanted to do business valuation, and they had no data on growth by industry or by industry sector, or on what common wages were, or what compensation was, or what a common gross profit might be for a particular business. There was no data. That doesn't mean the data wasn't available, but it didn't take very long for those that own the data to figure out, we can make money from this. And I have no problem with that. But when I went to a seminar on banking in Hong Kong, and this was for bankers who were being urged by accounting standard setters to tell everybody how they valued their stock portfolios, because you remember the last big recession that we had prior to this latest one for COVID. We had a big banking meltdown where, under the accounting rules, banks and other commercial investors had to write down their portfolios because the market fell out. Well, these bankers were talking about their formulas for how they value their portfolios. If you're Bank of China or you're UBS, you don't want to tell anybody how you value your portfolio, and yet they're in your financial statement. And if you don't tell people how they are, then how do they know what the risk is of that portfolio? So I remember Thomson Reuters was there, and they're a big producer of all kinds of products, and they would sell you data for $25,000 a year. Most practitioners in business valuation don't have that kind of money around. They don't do the volume that they would need in order to sustain an annual subscription of $25,000. And this was 10 years ago. So we need data. And even at IVSC, they confess that perhaps ESG isn't ready for prime time for being considered in business valuation because data is spotty, it's thin, and we don't know if it's reliable. A lot of aspects of business valuation make use of data for global analysis of equity risk premiums, size premiums, or industry premiums. And we use a CAPM buildup model. So what is a typical ESG score for each specific industry? We don't know yet. When will we know? I don't know. It depends on how important ESG is over the next 10 years. We use an expanded CAPM, adding another premium for an ESG adjusted discount. And if we do, how do we do that? How would ESG be incorporated into WACC? WACC is not my favorite method of calculating a discount rate, but it's used in many parts around the world. There's been no discussion about how would ESG impact the calculations that go into using the weighted average cost of capital. We could do this in the projections. If you're valuing a company's future value and you're doing it based on a discounted cash flow basis, maybe there should be a provision next to the capital expenditure requirements for mitigation in the future for costs to correct bad ESG. But how do we do that? How do we instruct our clients on how to do that? How are our asset approach valuations affected by real property? The real property appraisers that I talk to say they don't consider it. Maybe a building needs all wiring, or it needs updates in the light switches that will turn themselves off. Or maybe the plumbing is real old because it's a 70-year-old building, and the pipes are all clogged, and getting water to the 10th floor not only takes a long time, but it comes out and it's gray or it's green or it's brown, and the people think it's not safe. They don't consider that. What they consider is how much money can the investor of the building make from the rental cash flows. Yeah. The same issues relate to real property appraisals for high density residential properties. So are we prepared? And I would suggest we are not prepared, but we're getting close. IACVS has a task force right now that is working on this, and we expect that by early October, we will have at least an 8-hour class to look at the issues that I've talked about today and be able to present to you, the valuation practitioner, several models about how you might approach evaluation of ESG risks. Now, note, I've changed the word. I'm not talking about ESG scores anymore, because ESG scores tell us nothing other than what a credit reporting agency says your ESG score is. I'm talking about being able to evaluate those factors of environmental, social, and governance values that constitute risks to the production of profit in the future. Because that's what our valuation profession is about. It's about evaluating how can we put a value on a company based on what its expected future value is supposed to be. Okay, so investors in public companies want either investments in companies that are ESG responsible or give the highest rate of return. This creates the ESG controversy today. It seems that those that think ESG are important are probably going to win the argument that we need to do what's good for the greater good, not what's good for the individual. But we'll see. The problem for valuation professionals is that without corroborative data, the valuer is left to make personal decisions about ES and G. Yeah, that's right. If you don't have data, then what you have left is your opinion. And this would represent a personal bias about the entity. Well, these guys, they have the potential to pollute, or, they don't treat their employees very well, in my opinion. And if your personal consideration of ES and G become factors in how you arrive at value, you might not be independent. One of the hallmarks of the business valuation professional is independence. You can't tell me what your profit is you can't tell me what your value is going to be. That's my job. You can tell me what your cash flows are going to be. You can tell me what your assets are worth at fair market value or fair value today. But I, the valuer, I own the discount rate. I own it. It's mine. You may not like it, but that's what my professional opinion is. And that will determine significantly what the value is that I put on a business. I need to be independent, but I also need to have data, so I'm not just doing air extraction and saying this is the value. I need to have data so I can say, this is my opinion, but it's really based on this and this and this and this, and I've done research and I have found this stuff, and this seems to be, where this company is going. It's really about having an educated opinion. And right now, there isn't enough data out there to make an educated opinion. Now, nevertheless, we are working the problem because it is here, it is now. People demand answers, and we want to comply. We want to provide at least a framework to begin your ability to consider ESG in business valuations. And we recognize there's some urgency to this. I will tell you, there's no other organization in the world that is doing this. And we look for collaboration with organizations like IOV to help us get through this. So when this first 8 or 12-hour class is available, we're gonna run it up the flagpole to everybody, because feedback is going to be so important. Somebody out there has got brilliant ideas about how to solve this problem. We just haven't heard what those brilliant ideas are yet, and we're not going to until we start having broader discussions through seminars like this on this issue. So if you've got ideas or you've got comments, I would suggest you, and I will tell you, I really don't want 300 new email a day, but send me your comments. Send me your ideas. And if you don't want to send them to me, send them to Mr. Vinay at IOV, and he'll make sure that we get the relevant comments in for consideration as we're really putting together this incredibly important and massive project. Okay, so back to you, sir.
Uh, Thanks, Williams. And I think we have one question also. Uh,
Yes, and
uh,
I sent
Graham
my
and Probus.
yeah, I sent my file to you of these slides.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
I would like to have the recording sent to me when it's available.
sure, definitely, we would be. One thing is that there is some one question only, I would say,
Okay.
uh, that Mr. Graham Antrobus, two quick questions. Uh, uh, is ESG here to stay? And do you think it is considered more widely in valuations if we can find ways to reduce subjectivity? I
Well,
mean, go
first let me introduce Graham. He's part of he's part of our task force that's working to solve this problem. So I want you to I want to let you know that he has some background on this, but it's a really important question. Um, Apparently, it's here to stay for now. I don't, IACVS made some effort to try and derail this last fall, and it's not happening. IVSC is conducting a new study through survey. We are conducting our own survey. It's out there now. If you haven't seen it, we'll make sure we send it to you. We think this kind of feedback from the profession is very, very important, especially as we're developing this model for how to deal with ESG. But I'll tell you what, until climate control becomes more controlled, where temperatures are going down, where we're not having these long-term heat waves that everybody's starting to notice now, until that changes, I think that the discussion about ESG is going to continue. Now, will it evolve to be a big company issue, or will it really become important to smaller companies as well? And that's part of the sub debate here. So Graham, good question. Is there anything else we should chat with here? I've gone over my time. I want to thank everybody who's in this seminar, for coming today. Your participation as a spectator is important. Your feedback to these ideas and this discussion would be greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated. So what do you say there, Mr. Vinay?
yeah. Uh, just
Are we done or what?
No, no, no. I'm there. Somehow my camera has become off. Let me check how is has happened. Anyway, I think I am audible to you. Hello, am
Yeah,
I
I'm
audible?
hello.
Yeah, am I audible, Williams?
Oh, I can hear you. I just can't see you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, my camera somehow I don't know
I
how is
don't know. No,
it.
technology.
This one.
No, if
Anyway.
you want technology to work, go find a college student.
But this is a really uh, it was good to listen to you, and so very motivating or towards the ESG, like, and in very simple terms you have explained the term ESG especially, and the data, you have rightly put on that the data is the most important part of this ESG, as far as I can see, and others can also visualize, and you have already mentioned. And in this regard, lot has to be done. Still we
Yeah,
are not we are just, I think it has just begun, this
I, I
ESG.
I think so. There's so much work to be done. It's almost
Yes,
overwhelming.
yes, it
Ah,
is.
there you
So
are.
much.
There's your.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
And
I
the feedback, we have a feedback system. We have a feedback system, and I would request all present here, our and all the participants, and there is a system that they have to give the feedbacks, and perhaps whatever we collect the feedback from and their comments, we would always like to share with you that
wonderful.
what is their take, and I think we can now move on. And Williams, I would like to at IOV we would like to see more of you in coming days. And I had a question, but you have almost answered all the questions. I don't know how you knew that I had a question. And my question was like, in the last you have explained, and I had written, what is the impact on asset valuation? And
Yeah.
for that matter, you have almost explained. And my views are also on those lines only. But the valuers, I think they can have a narrative, they can build a narrative how the ESG can impact their asset valuation, where we move towards the sustainability of the value. That is very vital in our case.
Well, and
So,
our purpose here is to help valuers solve the problem, um, not to solve it for them, because there's so many variations on this that we haven't even discovered yet. Um, but we need to begin somewhere. And
yeah,
so when our next course is available, we'll of course let you know.
please.
I've always enjoyed coming to India. It takes forever to get there because I'm on absolutely the other side of the world, but I always enjoy myself. I certainly, you know, um, thought it was a great opportunity last November to go to Mumbai, and I'll look forward to the next one.
Yeah, this year we are holding this Indian Value Congress, which is a annual event at
Mhm.
Cochin in December only, in the beginning of December. Cochin is a state of Kerala. It's a
Uh-huh.
coastal city. So we
Oh,
are
well,
we are going to hold Indian Value Congress there in the first week of December. So I'll perhaps send you an invitation. Then you see how you can make, and what more. But that is for some other time. Now we have taken most of more time of from you at the stroke of midnight, rather early morning.
well,
So it is.
I'm going to go have some breakfast and go back to bed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so thank you very much again from
Thank
all the participants on the behalf of the IOV and the participant. I thank you again for sparing so vital time with us and
you. Good.
explaining about this. Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.